I said no to my fiancé's weekly nephew sleepovers. Ow, he's furious. But am I really the villain here? The smell of burnt toast wafted through the kitchen as Mike stumbled in, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The digital clock on the oven blinked an angry red, reminding him that he had forgotten to reset it after the last power outage. He glanced at the charred remnants of breakfast with a sigh, tossing them into the bin. It had been one of those weeks, long nights at the office, followed by even longer nights at home, trying to make up for lost time with the kids. Sammy and Andy had been particularly rowdy the previous evening, their laughter echoing through the paper-thin walls of the apartment as they played hide-and-seek. I had retreated to the bedroom, earbuds in, trying to drown out the sound with a podcast, but even that had failed when the internet dropped out again, leaving me to face the chaos unfiltered. Mike's phone buzzed with an urgent message from work, summoning him back to the office, but the screen remained eerily dark, plunging him into a silent panic. He had been so tired that he hadn't noticed it was out of charge. He fumbled for the charger, his heart racing as he hoped it was just a simple battery issue. But the phone remained stubbornly unresponsive, the screen a mirror to his own weariness. The quiet of the kitchen was suddenly shattered by the sound of little feet pounding down the hallway, followed by the thud of the fridge door slamming shut. The boys had found the leftover pizza and were now arguing over the last piece. Mike took a deep breath and composed himself before turning to face the miniature tornado that had invaded our living space. "Hey guys," he called out, trying to sound cheerful despite the exhaustion weighing down his voice. Their eyes lit up as they saw him, and for a moment, the chaos was forgotten. "Uncle Mike," they chorused, their voices filled with excitement. They bombarded him with a flurry of questions about his day and their upcoming sleepover plans. But as Mike looked at me, the smile on his face faded. He knew we needed to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the lack of space for two growing boys every weekend. He sat down at the kitchen table, rubbing his eyes, and said, "Guys, Uncle Mike has to go back to work for a bit. Can you go play in your room while we have a quick chat?" They looked at us both, a hint of concern in their eyes, before nodding and running off, their footsteps gradually fading away. With the temporary peace, we sat down to discuss the future of the weekly tradition. "I don't know what to say, babe," he began, his voice tinged with sadness. "They really look forward to this." "I know," I said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder, "but we can't ignore the fact that it's going to be really hard for me to work from home with them here every week." Mike nodded slowly, his shoulders drooping. "I just don't want to disappoint them." We sat in silence for a few moments, the tension thick between us. Then, I had an idea. "What if we start doing it once a month instead?" I suggested. "It's not like we're saying no forever, just giving us a chance to adjust to our new living situation." He looked up at me, hope flickering in his eyes. "Do you think they'll understand?" "We'll explain it to them," I assured him. "And maybe we can plan some special outings or activities on the other Fridays, so they still feel special." He took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's give it a shot." The weight of the decision settled on us as we both knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we had to find a balance between our new life together and maintaining the special bond Mike had with his nephews. We'd figure it out, one sleepover at a time. As we were about to discuss the logistics of breaking the news, the doorbell chimed through the apartment, startling us both. Mike looked at me with a quizzical expression as he got up to answer it. My heart quickened at the thought of who could be interrupting our delicate conversation so early on a weekend. To our astonishment, it was Mr. Jenkins, the building manager. His usual stern demeanor was replaced by a peculiar smile that made us both exchange curious glances. "Good morning," he said, holding a clipboard to his chest. "I've got something I think you'll be interested in." Mike's eyes widened as Mr. Jenkins presented us with a set of keys and a glossy brochure. "The tenants upstairs just broke their lease early. We've got a larger, renovated apartment available immediately. It's got an extra bedroom and soundproofing," he said with a knowing nod. "Would you two like to take a look?" We exchanged glances, the surprise etched on our faces. It was as if the universe had heard our plight and sent us a lifeline. The apartment upstairs had been the object of our envy for months, with its spacious layout and modern finishes. The offer was unexpected, but it also brought with it a new set of concerns. Could we afford the rent hike? Would this change the dynamics of our relationship with Mike's family? And most importantly, would this solve our problem, or just postpone it? Mike took the keys and brochure, his hand lingering in the air. "We'll have to think about it," he told Mr. Jenkins, his voice filled with hesitation. The manager nodded understandingly. "Take your time, but I'd recommend acting quickly. It won't be available for long." He turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving us in the hallway with our thoughts. "What do you think?" Mike asked, his eyes searching mine for an answer. I took the brochure and flipped through the pages, imagining the boys' delight at having their own space during their weekly visits. The new apartment would certainly alleviate my work from home woes, and perhaps give us all some much-needed breathing room. But the price tag was steep, and I knew Mike had been saving for a new car. "Let's go see it," I said finally. "We can decide after that." The stairs creaked beneath us as we climbed to the second floor. The door to the apartment swung open, revealing a pristine space that was a stark contrast to our cluttered abode. The walls were freshly painted in calming shades of blue, the floor gleaming with new hardwood. There was an office space, separate from the main living area, that would serve as my sanctuary from the kids' noise, and the bedroom for the boys had a closet that was almost as big as ours. As we walked through the apartment, the potential grew more tantalizing. The soundproofing was a game-changer. We could host sleepovers without disturbing my work. Yet, the thought of leaving the comfort of our current home and the memories we had built there was bittersweet. Mike looked at me, the excitement in his eyes now tempered by doubt. "Is this what we want?" I took a deep breath and let out a slow exhale. "It's a big change," I admitted. "But maybe it's the solution we need." We stood in the doorway of the potential new apartment, the future stretching out before us like a blank canvas. It was a chance to redefine our boundaries and create a new normal that worked for everyone. But first, we had to navigate the delicate conversations with his family and decide if this was truly the path we wanted to take. As we were about to leave, a knock sounded from the door across the hall. A tall, mysterious-looking woman with piercing blue eyes and a warm smile greeted us. "Hello," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Lila. I heard you're considering moving in here." Mike took her hand with a confused smile. "Yes, we're just looking around," he replied. Lila's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Well, if you do decide to take the plunge, I might have an offer that could sweeten the deal." She leaned in closer and lowered her voice. "I'm a professional nanny with a knack for crafts and keeping little ones entertained. I'd be more than happy to help out with the boys on Friday nights. In fact," she said, her smile growing wider, "I might even be able to convince them that crafts with Auntie Lila are more fun than video games." I couldn't hide my shock, but Mike's eyes lit up with hope. "Really?" Lila nodded. "Really. I've noticed how much you both care for your nephews, and I can see it's been a bit of a juggling act. I'd be happy to lend a hand." She paused, then added, "And it turns out we have a bit of history together." Her words sent a jolt of curiosity through me. What kind of history could we possibly have with this stranger? But before I could ask, she continued, "I used to work with Sammy and Andy's mom. She was a dear friend of mine. When she passed away, I promised to look out for those two rascals." The revelation hit Mike like a ton of bricks. His sister had never mentioned this connection, and the realization that his nephews had an extended family right here, in our building, was both surprising and heartwarming. It was as if the universe had sent us not just a solution, but a sign that we were on the right track. "Thank you, Lila," Mike managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll definitely keep that in mind." As we left the apartment, the weight of our decision had shifted. With Lila's help, the burden didn't feel so heavy anymore. We had an unexpected ally, a lifeline in the form of a kind neighbor who understood the complexities of blended families and the need for balance. Mike turned to me, his eyes brimming with hope. "Maybe this could work," he said. "We could still have the sleepovers, but with a little extra help." The thought of Lila's calming influence and her bond with the boys made me feel a bit better about the whole situation. "Let's talk to your sister first," I suggested. "Make sure she's okay with it." Mike nodded, already pulling out his phone to make the call. "You're right, but I have a good feeling about this." The conversation with Mike's sister was surprisingly positive. She was thrilled to hear about Lila and the possibility of her being a part of the boys' lives. It seemed that she had known her too, and had only the best things to say about her. With her blessing, we were one step closer to making the leap into the unknown. The following Friday, as we prepared to tell Sammy and Andy about the potential move, Lila knocked on our door, a bag of art supplies in hand. "I thought we could break in the new place with a little crafting," she said, winking at me. "If you decide to take it, of course." The boys' faces lit up at the sight of the glitter and paint, and suddenly the apartment didn't seem so small anymore. The four of us sat down in the empty living room, surrounded by the promise of new beginnings and the comfort of an old friendship rediscovered. As we painted and laughed, the walls of our future home felt less like a prison and more like the backdrop to a new chapter in our lives, one that included not just us, but an extended family we never knew we had. The tension between Mike's love for his nephews and my need for a quiet workspace began to unravel, revealing a tapestry of shared moments and memories that could only grow richer with time. The decision was still ours to make, but the path ahead looked a little brighter with Lila by our side. But as we were about to sit down and talk it over with Sammy and Andy, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was an unexpected face that greeted us, Mike's long-lost brother, Tom, who we hadn't seen in years. His grin was infectious, and the boys' eyes went wide with excitement as he scooped them up in his arms. "Uncle Tom," they squealed, burying their faces in his neck. Mike looked equally shocked, his hand frozen mid-dial on his phone. "What are you doing here?" Tom chuckled and set the kids down. "I got your mom's email about the wedding," he said. "Thought it was time I crashed the party." The room was filled with laughter and stories of the past as Tom regaled us with tales of his travels. He had always been the adventurous one, the sibling who'd chosen the road less traveled. And as he spoke, a new idea began to form in my mind. "Mike," I whispered, tugging at his shirt sleeve. "What if Tom took the boys on weekend adventures?" Mike's eyes widened, and he looked from me to Tom and back again. "You wouldn't mind?" Tom's smile grew. "Mind? I'd love it. I've missed these little rascals. Besides," he winked at the boys, "it's time I taught them how to fish." The twist in our weekend routine was as surprising as it was welcome. With Tom back in the picture, the pressure of hosting sleepovers every weekend lifted, and a sense of unity grew within our extended family. The boys were thrilled at the prospect of exploring the city with their uncle, and Mike and I could finally enjoy our weekends without the stress of juggling work and playtime. We sat down with the kids and Tom, explaining our situation and the idea of the weekly adventures. The excitement on their faces was worth any potential inconvenience. Tom promised them hikes in the nearby forest, trips to the zoo, and even a surprise visit to an indoor rock climbing gym. The thought of them bonding and creating memories was priceless. Mike's mother was overjoyed when she heard the news. "It'll be just like old times," she said, her eyes misting over. "Your dad would be so happy to see you all together." And so it was decided. Our weekends transformed into a series of excitement and anticipation, with Tom taking the reins on Friday nights. The sleepovers didn't end. They just evolved, and the apartment no longer felt too small for our growing family. Instead, it became a cozy haven we looked forward to returning to after our weekly escapades. The first Friday with Tom went off without a hitch. The boys were up early, packing,